phone on the watch desk at Station 9 hasn't had a dial tone in 10 years. And I know that because I'm the one who filled out the paperwork to have the line cut. It's a heavy black desk model. The kind with a coiled cord that went stiff and yellow a long time ago, bolted to a steel plate that somebody screwed down in 1970-something, so a tired man at 2 a.m. couldn't knock it off the desk when he grabbed for it half asleep. There's a second phone next to it, red, no dial. Just a handset and a single line that used to ring down direct from the county dispatch center in Renfrew. We called it the ring down. When the ring down went off, you didn't ask questions. You wrote the address on the call slip. You hit the tone switch, and you went. That red phone rang last Tuesday at 12:51 in the morning. And I was standing 8 feet away from it with a clipboard in my hand and a flashlight under my arm. And I want to tell you the whole thing slow and in order, the way you'd write up a run, because that's the only way I've found to keep my head straight about it. If I let it come at me all at once, I start making the kind of decisions a man my age shouldn't be making at 1 a.m. in a building that's supposed to be empty. My name is Dale Mercer. I'm 57. For the last 9 years, I've worked for Marsh County Facilities Maintenance, which is a polite way of saying I'm the man they send to check on buildings nobody wants anymore. Closed schools, the old county home up on Ridge Street, the transfer station out by the landfill. And Station 9, the volunteer firehouse out on Quarry Road in Calhoun Township, which the county took title to after the fire company folded, and which has been sitting on a list marked surplus, pending disposition, since the fall of 2016. I check it twice a month. Roof, gutters, the sump pump in the back of the bay, the padlocks on the apparatus doors, the break-ins that happen every couple of years when kids figure out the place is empty. I write a half-page report and I email it to Gil Hartwell, my supervisor. And Gil files it somewhere and nothing ever happens because the county's been trying to sell that building for as long as I've been checking on it, and nobody wants a 50-year-old firehouse on a road that floods. I should tell you the part that matters, which is that I used to be a firefighter at Station 9. Volunteer. 22 years, off and on, starting when I was 19. My father, Walt Mercer, was the captain there for most of that. He's the one who taught me how to pull a charged line and how to read a roof and how to sit the watch desk at night without falling asleep, which is a skill, whatever you might think. So when the county handed me the keys to that building 9 years ago, they probably thought they were doing me a kindness, giving the old place to a man who'd care about it. Mostly it just feels like being asked to sit with something while it dies. I'm telling you all of that so you understand I'm not the kind of man who goes looking for things. I don't believe in much. I believe in keeping water out of a building and grease off a stovetop and my mouth shut at work. And for most of 9 years, that's all Station 9 ever asked of me. The calls started about 14 months ago. The first one I can pin a date to was a Thursday in April. I'd gone out late because the forecast had a frost warning and the sump line out back will freeze if I don't drain it. And I was in the truck bay with a wrench when I heard a phone ring. Now, you have to understand, there is no phone service to that building. The line was cut in 2016. I cut it. I keep saying that because it's the load-bearing fact in this whole thing. There is no dial tone, no service, no copper to the road. And I heard the desk phone ring, the black one. 2 long, old-fashioned rings. And then it stopped. I figured it was my own cell in my jacket on the workbench, doing something stupid the way phones do. I checked it. Nothing. I stood there in the bay a while, listening to the building tick and settle, and then I went back to the sump line, and I told myself I'd imagined it, which is a thing you can do exactly one time. The second call I answered. That was May. I was at the watch desk doing paperwork because the light's better there and the chair doesn't wobble. And the black phone rang. 3 rings this time. And before my brain caught up, my hand had already picked it up. Because 22 years builds a reflex you don't lose. And there was a woman on the line. Older. Calm in the way people are calm when they've decided to be, which is different from actually being calm. She said there was smoke coming from the back of the house, and she couldn't find her husband. And could we send the engine? And she gave an address, 114 Quarry Road. I knew that address. Everybody who ran out of Station 9 knew that address. The Holloway place burned in 2009. We lost the structure, and we damn near lost a man named Eddie Vance going in after the homeowner who, it turned out, wasn't even home. The house was a total loss, and the county scraped the lot. And it's been a gravel pad with a for sale sign for 15 years. There is no house at 114 Quarry Road. There is no woman. There is no husband out back. I said, "Ma'am, who is this?" And the line did this thing it does, where it goes from a voice to a kind of pressure, a hum with a shape to it, and then to nothing, not a click. Just the absence of the sound that had been there. I stood holding a dead handset connected to a dead line in a building with no power to the phone system, and I put it back in the cradle very carefully, the way you'd put down something you didn't want to wake, and I drove home and I didn't sleep. I want to be honest about how long I spent not believing it, because that's most of the story, really. For months, I had an explanation for everything. Crossed lines. The phone company runs copper down Quarry Road, and maybe there was bleed over. Some old pair, still energized somewhere. Ringing voltage finding its way into a circuit that was supposed to be dead. Prank calls kids with a scanner. Kids who knew the place was empty. Kids who'd looked up the Holloway fire online because it's the kind of local story that lives forever on a message board. Old recordings, maybe the watch desk had some answering unit I'd forgotten about. Some tape that played back when the building flexed in the wind. I'm a practical man. I had a practical answer for all of it, and I held on to those answers the way you hold a railing on bad stairs. The trouble is that the calls kept being right about things I hadn't told anyone. By summer, it wasn't just the phone. The first time I noticed the call slip, I almost stepped on it. The slips are little carbon paper forms, 3 to a pad, where the watch officer writes the address and the time and the nature of the call, and we hadn't used them in a decade. The last pads went into a banker's box in the records room when the station closed. But there was one on the watch desk one morning when I came in to check a roof leak, filled out in pencil, in handwriting that wasn't mine, and the address on it was 22 Coalbank Hollow Road, and the time written in the corner was 2:14 a.m., and the nature of call said, "Smoke investigation. No answer at door." I knew that address too. I'll get to it. I took the slip home. I have it in a drawer. I've looked at it enough times to know that the longer you look at handwriting that nobody alive wrote, the less it looks like anything at all, just marks. The way a word stops being a word if you say it too many times. Other things. The tone speaker. Every firehouse has a tone when dispatch keys up to alert the station. There's a sequence of electronic tones over the speakers that wakes the crew. And the sound of it is wired so deep in me that I'll come up out of a dead sleep at home thinking I heard it. The speakers at Station 9 are disconnected. The amplifier they ran through has been in a box in the records room since the line was cut. And one night in July, I heard the tones drop through the building. 2 ascending notes and then a long flat one. clear as the day my father keyed them. And I stood in the bay with my heart going, and I could not find a single thing in that building that was capable of making that sound. The bay door indicator. There's a panel by the watch desk. Green lights for bay open, red for closed, and the bulbs are dead. I've tested them. One night the center one was green. I cycled the breaker. It went out. The next time I came in, it was green again, and the breaker for that panel was off. I'd shut it off myself. I checked it 3 times. And the smell? This is the one that gets under me worse than any of it, because the others I can argue with, but smell goes straight past the part of you that argues. Diesel. The truck bay at Station 9 hasn't held an apparatus since 2016. The floor's been scrubbed and sealed, and the bay's been empty long enough that it smells like any other concrete room. Cold and a little damp. But some nights, I'd open the door from the day room into the bay and walk into a wall of a diesel exhaust. Hot. The way it smells when an engine's been idling under a closed door. And underneath it, the wet canvas smell of charged hose. And the rubber and sweat smell of turnout gear that's been worn. The smell of a station that just got back from a run in an empty bay on a cold night, with no truck and no crew and no fire anywhere in the county. That's when I started keeping a log of my own. Not for the county, for me. Date, time, what I heard, what I smelled, what I found. I'm a maintenance man. I write things down. And when I put 14 months of it on the kitchen table and looked at all of it at once, I could see there was a pattern, and the pattern was the thing that finally broke my ability to pretend. The calls came after midnight, always, never before, most often between 12:30 and 3, which anybody who's run a fire station could tell you is the dead heart of the night shift. The hours when the body wants to quit, and the calls that come are the bad ones, the ones where somebody's been hurt for a while before they admitted it, the ones where a space heater's been running too long, the ones where an old man finally calls about the chest pain he's had since dinner. And the addresses weren't random. Every one of them was inside the old Station 9 First Due District, not the new district that the one Station 12 and Bell Run runs now, after they absorbed our territory. The old one. The boundaries that haven't existed on a county map since 2016. The calls were coming from inside lines that nobody draws anymore. I went to see Ray Toomey about it finally, because I had to say it out loud to somebody who'd understand the words. Ray and I ran together at 9 back in the day, and when the station folded, Ray went over to the county, and now he's a dispatcher at the 911 center in Renfrew. He's the closest thing I've got to somebody who'd hear me out without dialing the county for a wellness check. We met at the diner on Route 8 because I wasn't going to say any of it on a recorded line. I told him the short version. The phone, the slips, the addresses inside the old district. Ray's a big quiet guy, and he listened to all of it, stirring a coffee he wasn't drinking. And when I was done, he didn't laugh. And he didn't tell me I was tired, which I appreciated more than I can say. "You remember the last night?" Ray said. It wasn't a question. I remember it. "You know what bugs me about that night?" he said. "I've thought about it more than I should. We got told to stand down at midnight. Funding was gone. The merger paperwork was signed. Station 12 had the district as of 0000 hours October 15th. So at 12:01, we weren't a station anymore. And at 2:14 that morning, a call came in for Coal Bank Hollow, and it routed to us because the system hadn't been switched over yet. Somebody downtown hadn't flipped a thing they were supposed to flip. And there was no crew because we'd stood down. And it sat. And by the time anybody at 12 picked it up and rolled, it was too late to be anything but a recovery. I knew all of that. I'd known it for 10 years. But hearing Ray say it across a diner table, I felt the floor of the thing I'd been not thinking about give way under me a little. 22 Coalbank Hollow Road, Earl Dwyer's place. Earl was a retired millwright, a widower, 81 years old, the kind of man who'd lived in the same house for 50 years and wasn't going to call anybody for help until the help was the only thing left to call. He'd had a small fire. Investigators figured a frayed cord behind a recliner, and he'd called it in himself, calm the way that generation does. And the call went to a station that had stood down 2 hours before, and it sat in a system nobody was watching. And Earl Dwyer waited for an engine that wasn't coming in a district that had stopped existing at midnight. I was on the watch desk that night. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where I've lied to myself the longest. The official story, the one I told the county and the one I told myself, is that we'd stood down and the call was dispatch's responsibility. And the routing error was a downtown failure, and there was nothing any of us could have done. And all of that is true. Every word of it is true. But I was in the building. I'd gone back to Station 9 around 1 in the morning that last night because I couldn't sleep, because I wanted to sit at my father's watch, the desk one more time before they took the keys, because a man gets sentimental about a place that raised him. My father had been dead 2 years by then. The station was the closest thing I had left to him. So I was sitting at that desk in the dark when the ringdown went off at 2:14. And I let it ring. We'd stood down? The line wasn't supposed to be live. I told myself it was a wrong number, a system test, a ghost in the wires. Already the lines did strange things that night. Everybody downtown was patching and switching. I told myself it wasn't my call to make anymore. I had no crew. I had no engine. They'd come for the apparatus that afternoon, and Engine 9 was already at the county yard, waiting to be auctioned. What was I going to do? Drive my pickup to a structure fire? So I sat there, and I let the red phone ring 11 times. I counted, and then it stopped. And I went home, and I never told a living soul I'd been in the building. And 4 hours later, I heard on the scanner that Station 12 had made a recovery at 22 Coalbank Hollow Road. I could have picked up the phone. I'd have heard Earl Dwyer's voice. And maybe I couldn't have done a thing with it. I had no truck, no crew, no authority. But I could have called Bell Run myself, screaming at 2:14 instead of letting the system find it at 3:40. 86 minutes. I've had 10 years to do that math. So when I tell you the calls coming through Station 9 after midnight come from incidents that were never properly answered, never properly closed, never properly recorded, understand that I'm not a neutral party to that. I'm the man at the watch desk who didn't pick up. And the building knows it. I don't know how a building knows a thing, but Station 9 knows what I did, and for 14 months it's been ringing the phone at the same hours, calling out addresses inside a district I let die. And I've been telling myself it's crossed wires. After the diner, things changed. It stopped feeling like the building was haunted and started feeling like the building was working, like it had a job, and it was doing it the way it always had, just without anybody left to send. And I started checking the records. Gil keeps the closed station files in a vault room at the county building downtown. And as the man responsible for the property, I had a reason to be in there, so I'd go in on the pretense of pulling disposition paperwork, and I'd read the old run logs instead. The CAD records the computer-aided dispatch logs only go back digitally to 2011, but the paper incident reports for Station 9 go back to the 70s. Banker's box after banker's box of them, my father's handwriting in half of them. I was looking for two things. I was looking for the addresses the phone had been giving me to see if they matched real incidents. And they did, every one of them, but not always the way you'd think. Some of the calls matched fires from years back, like the Holloway place. Some matched calls that, as far as I could find, never happened at all. Addresses that were real, houses that were real, but no incident report, no CAD entry, nothing. Calls for fires that the county has no record of ever occurring. And a few of them, the ones that scared me worst, I couldn't find because they hadn't happened yet. I'd write down an address off a call slip and check the records and find nothing. And then a week or two later, it had come over the scanner. Station 12 dispatched to that address for exactly the kind of call the slip described. The phone wasn't just replaying the past. It was running the whole board. Fires that burned, fires that didn't, fires that were coming. Like the station never accepted that its district closed, and it's still taking every call that comes through that piece of the county. Still trying to answer for all of it. Still trying to close the ones that got left open, and the one that's been open the longest, the one it keeps coming back to, is 22 Coalbank Hollow Road, 2:14 a.m. No crew available, never cleared. The second thing I found was worse, and I almost wish I hadn't gone looking. The final incident report for the Dwyer fire is in the box. It's a standard structure fire report, filled out by a lieutenant at Station 12 the next morning. And the line at the bottom, the responding personnel line, where you list the crew that made the run, it has a name on it that shouldn't be there. Most of it's the 12 crew. But the watch officer line, the one that records who took the initial call at the receiving station, has my name on it. Dale Mercer, Station 9. In my father's handwriting. My father had been dead 2 years when that report was written. He never saw that night. And no one at Station 12 had any reason to write my name on anything because, as far as the county was ever told, I wasn't in the building. But there it is, on a 2016 report, in the hand of a man who died in 2014, listing me as the watch officer who received the call I let ring. The building wrote down what I did. It closed the loop in the only place it could. I took that report to Gil, sort of. I didn't tell him what I really wanted to know, and I just asked him, careful, whether old reports ever got amended, whether names ever got added later, whether there was any chain of custody thing that'd explain a report having handwriting on it from before the incident. Gil's a decent guy, a county lifer, more worried about liability than anything. And he looked at me a little funny and said, "Reports are reports, Dale. Nobody touches them. Why?" And I said, "No reason, just doing my due diligence before disposition." And Gil said the word disposition like it was good news. Because the reason he'd been short with me on email lately is that the county finally had a buyer. That's the thing I haven't told you yet. Station 9 is being sold. A developer out of Pittsburgh wants to turn it into a couple of offices and a coffee place, the way they do with old firehouses now, and the sale closes at the end of the month, and the first thing the new owner's going to do is gut the building. The watch desk, the tone panel, the bay doors, the red phone, all of it's going in a dumpster. Demolition of the interior starts the first week after closing. I'm the one who has to be there to hand over the keys and walk the contractor through the building. So I did a thing I'm not proud of. I started spending more nights there than the job called for. I told Gil I was monitoring for break-ins ahead of the sale, which was even true, but really I was sitting the watch desk after midnight because I'd gotten it in my head that I had until the end of the month to figure out what the building wanted, and that once they tore out that phone, whatever was trying to finish its work out there would either stop or move. And I didn't like either of those ideas as much as I thought I would. My daughter called me in the middle of all this. "Megan, we don't talk much, that's a longer story than this one, and Most of it's my fault, the same fault, the not picking up fault. Just pointed at a marriage and a kid instead of a phone. She lives over in Bell Run now, which I realized with a cold feeling one night is inside the old Station 9 district on the far edge on a road called Sumac Lane that used to be in our first due before the merger. She called to tell me she was pregnant, which is the kind of news that should make a man feel like the future's a real thing again, and instead all I could think, sitting in that dark firehouse with the receiver of a dead phone 6 inches from my hand, was that her address was inside the lines. I want to tell you the last night now. I've been circling it. It was a Thursday, 2 weeks ago, and there was a storm coming up the valley. Not snow, an ice storm, the worst kind we get. Freezing rain on lines already loaded. The kind of weather that takes the power out across half the county and starts fires. Because people drag out kerosene heaters and generators and run extension cords under rugs, and because trees come down on service drops and arc. By 10 that night, the county was getting hammered. I had the scanner on in the truck, and Station 12 was running call after call alarms, a transformer fire, a tree into a house out on Route 8. Dispatch was stacking calls. Ray was on shift. I could hear him on the air steady. But you could hear the load in it. The county dispatch overload that happens maybe twice a year, where there are more emergencies than there are trucks. I should have gone home. Instead, I drove out to Station 9 because the storm scared me in a specific way, because I had the feeling I can't explain it better than this. That a night when the whole district was on fire was exactly the kind of night the building had been waiting for. A night when it would have something real to answer. The power was out on Quarry Road when I got there. The building was black. I let myself in with the flashlight, and the cold inside was a different cold than outside. Drier, older. And I went to the watch desk, and I sat down in my father's chair, and I waited. And I listened to the ice tick against the bay doors. That thin, steady ticking that sounds like 1,000 tiny fingers. At 12:51, the red phone rang. Not the black one. The ring down. The direct line from dispatch. The one that meant a real call, the one you don't ask questions about. It hadn't rung once in 14 months. The black phone rang. The slips appeared. The tones dropped. But the ring down had stayed silent. And I understood the second I heard it that the building had been holding that line in reserve. That it was different. That this was the building keying up the way dispatch keys up. And that whatever was on the other end of the ring down was not a replay and not a maybe. It was a dispatch. I picked it up. It was Ray's voice. I want to be clear about that. It was Ray Toomey's voice, the man I'd had coffee with, the man who was at that exact moment sitting at a console 12 miles away in Renfrew. And it was him, and he was reading a dispatch the way he's read 10,000 of them, flat and fast and professional, and he said, Station 9, Station 9. Respond for a structure, possible entrapment, smoke and flame showing. Caller advises occupant pregnant and unable to exit. And he gave the address, and the address was on Sumac Lane in Bell Run. And it was my daughter's house. And then he said the part that put my hand flat on the desk to keep myself upright. He said, Station 9 responding unit, be advised, watch Officer Mercer on the desk, timeout 0051. He assigned me. The building assigned me, in Ray's voice, by name. The way the report had named me. The way the slips named the district that doesn't exist. It had me down as the responding unit before I decided a thing. I want to tell you I knew right away it wasn't real, that I knew Ray was 12 miles away and not on this deadline. that I knew there was no engine in the bay behind me and no crew in the bunk room, and that a 57-year-old maintenance man can't respond to a structure fire by himself with a flashlight. I knew all of that. I am a practical man, and I knew every bit of it, even with the receiver against my ear. But here's the thing I have to live with now. My daughter's address had never come through that phone before, not once in 14 months. I'd checked. And the calls that came through ahead of time, the ones for fires that hadn't happened yet, those had all come true, every one. So I was sitting there holding a phone that had a 14-month record of being right, telling me my pregnant daughter's house was on fire on the one night of the year when the whole county was burning and every truck was already running and dispatch was so overloaded that a call could sit for 86 minutes, the way one had once before, on my watch. I had two phones in front of me. The dead red one against my ear with Ray's voice on it, and my own cell phone on the desk with one bar because the towers were struggling, but not dead. And I had a choice. And it was not the choice you'd think, because the easy thing, the sane thing, the thing any rational man would do was to hang up the impossible phone and call the real 911 on the real phone and tell the real Ray to send the real Station 12 to my daughter's house. But I'd done the math. 12 was every truck it had. The address was on the far edge of the district, 25 minutes in good weather, longer on ice. If I called it in and it was real, they'd stack it behind a transformer fire and a tree into a house in a county that was already underwater. And it would sit the way Earl Dwyer's call sat. And I would have done the responsible, correct, by-the-book thing, and it would not be fast enough. And I would spend the rest of my life knowing I'd made the right call and lost her anyway. Or I could answer the phone in my hand. I could be the responding unit. I could say the words, "Back Station 9 responding," and get in my truck, which is not an engine, with my flashlight, which is not turnout gear, and drive to Sumac Lane myself, against the ice, 11 miles, and be the only unit in the county that wasn't already committed, and to get there in maybe 20 minutes if I didn't put it in a ditch. I understood sitting there exactly what the building was offering me. It was offering me the call I didn't take in 2016. The same call, the same hour, the same kind of night, the same impossible position. A station with no crew, no engine, no authority, and a phone ringing for someone who's going to wait too long. It had spent 14 months getting the routing right, so it could hand me the one I let ring. A second time, with my own daughter's name on it. It wasn't haunting me, it was giving me a second chance, which is a far more frightening thing. Because a haunting you can run from, and a second chance you have to answer. I keyed the talkback on the dead red phone. I don't know what made it work. There was no power to it. I keyed it anyway, the way you'd key a mic. And I said the words I should have said 10 years ago. I said, "Station 9, responding. Mercer on the desk, en route." And the building answered me. I have heard a lot of sounds in that firehouse over 14 months, but I had never heard this. The tones dropped 2 ascending notes and the long flat one through speakers that have no amplifier. And they were loud the way they're supposed to be, the way they're built to be so they'll wake a dead asleep man. And behind me in the Black Bay, I heard the apparatus doors start to move on their chains, the ice cracking off them as they lifted. And I heard air brakes release. That long, hard hiss of a truck coming up to ready in a bay where there has been no truck for 10 years. I heard boots on concrete. I heard the specific clatter of an SCBA harness being shrugged on, the clack of a helmet coming off a hook. the diesel coming up thick and hot behind me as something I could not see and will not try to describe to you came alive in the dark and got ready to roll. The station was operational again, without a crew or with one. I have not decided which is worse, and I don't think I meant to. I didn't turn around. I want that on the record. I did not turn around to look in the bay because some part of me older than my fear knew that if I saw the crew that was forming up behind me to answer this call, I would be one of them. That the responding unit had been assigned and I had answered up, and there is a roster you get put on when you say the words, and I had a real daughter on a real road who needed a real man in a real truck. And I could not be on both rosters at once. So I put down the red phone. I picked up my cell, and I called 911 like a sane person, and I got Ray, the real Ray, the tired one, 12 miles away, and I told him I lied. God help me. I told him I had eyes on smoke at the Sumac Lane address, that I was a retired firefighter passing by, that there was possible entrapment, an occupant who couldn't get out, and I made it sound like a confirmed report from a credible source instead of a phone call from a building that's been dead for 10 years, because a confirmed report from a former firefighter jumps the stack and maybe doesn't, and I needed it to jump the stack. And then I hung up on Ray, and I ran to my truck, and I drove to my daughter's house on 11 miles of ice with the tones of Station 9 still dropping behind me through the open bay doors. I beat Station 12 there by 6 minutes. The house was on fire, the back of it, an electrical fire, a generator. Her husband had run too close to the wall when the power went out. Exactly the kind of storm night fire I'd been afraid of all evening. They were already out, both of them, standing in the yard in the freezing rain, because a neighbor's smoke alarm had gone off through a shared wall and woken them, and they were cold and scared and fine. They were fine. Megan was fine. The baby's fine. The house took damage, but it stands. She didn't need me. That's the part I keep turning over. By the time I skidded up that driveway, my daughter was already standing safe in her own yard, and the call I'd answered, the second chance the building gave me, turned out to be a call where everybody lived, whether I came or not. I'll never know if that's because the building was wrong this one time, or because it was never really about Megan at all, because maybe the only thing that call needed was for me to finally pick up, to say the words, to respond. Maybe Earl Dwyer's line has been open in that building for 10 years, not because the building couldn't close it, but because the man who let it ring never had. And now I have. Station 12 cleared the scene at 02:24. I stood in my daughter's driveway and watched a real engine with a real crew pack up. And at 2:24 in the morning, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket, and it was a text from Gil, sent automatically off the county system, a maintenance alert. Motion detected. Station 9, Quarry Road, 02:14 hours. The alarm I'd installed myself. It had gone off at 2:14. The same minute Earl Dwyer's call came in 10 years ago. The minute the station closes its loop, I was 11 miles away in my daughter's yard, and at 2:14, something moved through the building I'd left with the bay doors open and the tones dropping, and the system saw it and logged it, and there was no one there for it to be. The sale closed last week. I handed the developer's contractor the keys on Monday. I walked him through the building the way I'm supposed to, and he was a nice enough young guy, didn't know a thing about the place. Talked about exposed brick and natural light. And when we got to the watch desk, he tapped the red phone and said they'd probably keep it, mounted on a wall as a decoration. Customers love that kind of thing. I said that sounded fine. The bay doors were closed. The tone panel was dark. The building was just a cold, empty firehouse, the way it is in the daytime. And I half wondered if I dreamed the whole thing, which is a thing you can do exactly one time. Ray called me yesterday. Not the system, not a ring down, just Ray on my cell in the afternoon, sounding strange. He said the new Station 12, they're building an addition, the county's finally funding it. Growth in the district, they ran their first overnight in the new section of the firehouse this week, and the night crew has filed 2 reports now, 2 nights running, that the phone at the new watch desk rings after midnight, a little after 12:30, and there's nobody on the line, no service to that extension yet. It's not even hooked up, and one of the young guys swears he heard the old tones from somewhere in the building. Tones their new system doesn't even use. 2 ascending notes and a long flat one. And Ray wanted to know, he didn't want to ask it. I could hear him not wanting to. Ray wanted to know if that meant it was over out at Station 9 or if it just meant the calls had found somewhere new to come through. I told him I didn't know. That's true, I don't. But I cleaned out my desk drawer at home last night finally, and the call slip's still in there. The one for 22 Coalbank Hollow Road, 2:14 a.m. No answer at door. And I noticed something I'd never let myself look at close. Down in the corner, on the line where the watch officer signs to clear a call where for 10 years it's been blank, where Earl Dwyer's call sat open because nobody ever closed it. There's a signature now. It's mine.